So, you sign up for a business strategy class. You're probably expecting to learn about, SWOT analysis, competitive advantages, financial metrics, all the standard stuff. But what if the really valuable lessons, the ones that stick with you, aren't on the syllabus at all? Let's dive into this and look past the textbook to see what these students really learned when they were put to the test. I mean, it seems like a simple question, right? You'd think the goal is pretty obvious. Learn how to build or run a successful company. But what if the most profound thing you walk away with is something else entirely? What if it's actually about learning something fundamental about yourself? Get this. That's a quote from a student named Tirza, and it's the perfect place to start because it just completely flips the script on us. Sometimes the most important discovery isn't finding the path you're meant to be on, but realizing you need to forge a totally new one. So yeah, this class was about way more than just business. It was about self-discovery.
So how did these students get to that point? Well, the journey really started the moment they had to step beyond the theory. The real learning kicked in when all those academic ideas had to collide with the messy, unpredictable nature of the real world.
As Tirza pointed out, academic frameworks can sometimes make even simple ideas feel overly complicated. The real challenge, and honestly where all the best lessons came from, was trying to apply these clean, neat frameworks to complex, practical problems where there just weren't any easy answers. The first major test was a super high-stakes business simulation. Basically, teams of students were just thrown into this competitive virtual market and tasked with running their own shoe company. They had to manage everything: production, marketing, finance, the whole shebang. And this insight from another student, Arya, really gets to the heart of what they discovered. They learned pretty quickly that there was no single game-winning move. Nope. Success actually came from something much more subtle. They discovered what we call the compounding effect. Students like Kai and Preston saw that tiny, consistent adjustments, like a slight increase in product quality here, a small shift in marketing spend there, they added up over time to create these massive differences in performance. It wasn't about making dramatic changes. It was all about disciplined, incremental progress. So the big takeaway is this. Strategy isn't just about the big, flashy, headline-grabbing decisions. It's really about the cumulative weight of thousands of small, thoughtful choices. And that, right there, was one of the core lessons from the whole simulation. But the simulation also created this fascinating tension. See, in the classroom, they were talking all about the importance of ethics and social responsibility, but as Tirza noted, the simulation's algorithm seemed to reward this relentless, single-minded focus on the bottom line. It really forced them to think critically about how companies try to balance their ideals with the very real pressures of market competition. Okay, so let's move on to the second major challenge, crafting a super comprehensive business plan completely from scratch. This was a big shift. It moved the focus from the fast-paced, reactive world of the simulation to the slow, methodical work of deep research and really clear writing. For a lot of them, the biggest hurdle was a concept that sounds deceptively simple: scope. What's the actual difference between an industry, a market, and a company? It sounds basic, right? But failing to make that distinction clear led to these muddled, repetitive plans that just went around in circles. And this is Nikita's aha moment. Just grasping that one distinction was a total breakthrough. Suddenly, she could structure her arguments logically, and her analysis got so much sharper and more persuasive. It's a perfect example of how one single, clear definition can unlock a whole new level of understanding.
And the process of just writing the plan taught other crucial skills. Zoe learns the power of breaking a massive project down into smaller, weekly chunks so it wasn't so overwhelming. Nikita discovered that even the stuff you think is obvious has to be backed by data. And Ivy realized a business plan isn't some static document you write once and forget about. It's a living guide that has to constantly adapt. Of course, none of this happened in a vacuum. Both the simulation and the business plan were group projects, which brought in the most complex, unpredictable variable of all: other people. And as Mario points out here, that was a huge advantage. When the teams figured out how to communicate openly, they found that their different viewpoints weren't a source of conflict, but a source of strength. The best ideas actually came out of those constructive debates. Students like Corson and Itzel found that success really just boiled down to a few core principles. Clear communication was totally non-negotiable, especially when everyone had different schedules. Accountability was huge. Everyone had to pull their own weight.
And adaptability was key because, let's be real, no plan survives first contact with reality or a teammate's unexpected idea. And all of that brings us to the final and, for a lot of these students, the most important lesson of the whole course. After wrestling with simulations, business plans, and all the team dynamics, they didn't just learn about strategy, they learned about themselves. You've got to hear Corson's story. He had actually failed this exact same class 6 years earlier. So for him, passing wasn't just about a grade. It was about proving to himself that he could overcome a past failure and succeed, even with all the demands of work and family. It was about reclaiming his own confidence. And then you have Zoe, who had a completely different kind of revelation. Under the pressure of that simulation, she saw her own decision-making patterns with brand new clarity. She recognized this tendency to react impulsively and emotionally whenever things went wrong. And that is a crucial piece of self-awareness that she can now manage in her career. And this brings us right back to where we started with Tirza. For her, the class wasn't a confirmation of her plans, but a clarification. By getting a real taste of what running a business actually feels like, she realized her passion lies somewhere else entirely. And that, right there, is an incredibly valuable, career-defining discovery. So, when it's all said and done, what did these students really walk away with? Sure, they learned strategic analysis, but they also learned adaptability, communication, and maybe most importantly, self-awareness. That's the toolkit that really matters, no matter what career path they end up choosing. Which leaves us with a final question for you to think about. Look back on your own education or your career. What's the most important lesson you ever learned that wasn't in the textbook or the job description? The answer to that might just be the most valuable piece of knowledge you have.